spinal cord level versus vertebral level, because they're two separate things. All right. Now, and if I said quiz question, exam question, if we took a knife and passed it at a transverse section between the L4, L5 vertebra, completely through, what part, or how much of the spinal cord, whatever, would I damage? None. Okay? There's still people, though, that will have a hard time with that because, all right, so if I pass it between L4, L5, do I damage any particular nerves or whatever? Yes. All right? Do I damage any sacral nerves? Of course I do. And that's what, well, when I say of course, yes I will. And that's where I got to get everybody to understand this. And that's where the problem comes in. People kind of go, that's kind of funny because you said the spinal cord ended at L1, L2. How can there be sacral nerves? How can there be an L4, L5 nerve or whatever? Okay? So this is what I want you to understand. So if you look at this diagram, I know it's small print on your, this is from the spinal cord lecture, I'm pretty sure. So if you look at this, you'll see that, the cord ends somewhere between L1 and L2. This one went a little bit lower, all right, but it ends, okay? But if you look at the cord here, what it says is, different things. Here's S1, S2, S3, S4, S5. Here's coccygeal 1, okay? So you can see where at L1 essentially is, that's vertebral level L1, but spinal cord level, I'm sitting here at about S5, okay? So the vertebral levels and the spinal cord levels don't match up. But understand, I still have an L1, an L2, an L3, L4, L5, S1 down spinal nerves being formed. That's what all that cauda equina is. It's all the rest of the rootlets coming off that we go down and form the spinal nerves at all the different levels below the spinal cord level. Okay? So if I, do I have an L4 spinal nerves, one on each side? Yes. Where do they come from? The L4 region of the spinal cord. If I pass a knife between vertebrae L1, L2, or let's say L2, L3, will I cut the L4 spinal nerve? Yes. Would I cut sacral nerve S3? Yes. Okay, at least the rootlets or whatever, not so much the nerve. So I need you to understand that, and if you look at this diagram, it's showing you, like, here's the the sacral nerves in black. Well, here's the black fibers coming down to go out between S1, S2, all the way down. These blue fibers are for the lumbar nerves. So here's my L4 coming off, going all the way down to go out between L4 and L5 vertebrae. Okay? So, yes, spinal cord ends. If I pass a knife through here just like this, I will not damage the spinal cord. Will I damage rootlets and all that kind of stuff? The answer is yes. Okay? So do you see the concept I'm talking about? Vertebral level, spinal cord level are not the same thing. Up high, they're pretty close. They match up fairly well. But the further down you go, the difference it would be. Now, I'm particularly talking about adults if I'm talking about this L1, L2 kind of thing. It would be different in newborn a little bit and definitely different in, embryonic. But for the most part, we're pretty much figuring work on humans, or adults. So we're going to talk about making sure you understand this L1, L2 level is where the spinal cord ends. There are still spinal nerves below that level. Okay? If I had some sort of insidious virus, oh yes ma'am, sorry.
So the nerves still come out at the level they're named? Does that make sense?
All of the
yeah, they still like
all the rootlets are coming off at those levels.
Yeah.
Right.
They originate higher.
They originate higher. There you go.
Okay.
Okay? They're coming off the spinal cord somewhere because they can't come off the spinal cord somewhere down here because there is no spinal cord down here.
Okay.
Spinal cord ended right here. And I think this diagram shows really nicely, and I'm not expecting, first let me make that clear, I don't expect you guys, I don't want you to learn where the spinal cord levels correspond to vertebral levels. That's not what I'm trying to get across. I just want you to understand that spinal cord level, vertebral level doesn't correspond. Because I know there's people are going to go home and try and memorize this picture, and that's not what I want. I just want you to understand the concept. Yes, sir?
So would you say the central nervous system ends between L1 and L2?
Sure, why not? I mean, it's where the spinal cord is. Central nervous system is spinal. Let's say its inferior end is at the L1, L2 level. Sure, I have no problem with that. Because all the rest of that stuff is part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay? Don't go home and memorize that picture. Just understand the concept behind that picture. Okay, so anyway, let me go back. My insidious virus. I have this really dastardly virus that's going to come along, and everybody just think this to yourself. Don't blurt out answers. Let's all play the game. Play nicely with your neighbors. I have an insidious virus that's going to come along, and it's going to wipe out all of the VPRs of the body. Gone. I can do my own sound effects. That's awesome. Alright, so wiped out all the VPRs. Alright, so what I want to know is, would I lose sensory innervation to any skin? I want to know if I lose motor innervation to any particular muscles. I'll just leave it at that for now. Alright? Would I lose any sensory innervation to skin? Would I lose any motor innervation to any muscles? So I always want to just kind of blurt out an answer and I'll say, think it to yourself. Play along, play nice. So yes to what? Both of those, one of those, two of those, none of those? Both. It's VPR. I thought ventral was motor, right? Ah, you guys are too smart for me to trick you that way. VPR is a mixed nerve, right? Okay, so I'm going to have to lose both sensory and motor innervation. What would happen if I did a DPR and asked you the same thing? Would I lose any sensation to skin? Would I lose any innervation to muscles?
No to the skin.
Oh my goodness, why no to the skin? Why is DPR not a mixed nerve just like a VPR is? It is. It goes to the skin of the back. DPR, sensory and motor. It's got to go to skin. Mm-hmm.
Well, only the muscles.
No, what? It would be no advantage whatsoever for a VPR to get skin of the back. It's going to be carried with some of the musculature as Dr. Hutchins showed you. So like this thing. Hell, if I know where the picture is. So I'll come back. I'll find it later. But no. And, you know, typically if I'm asking you, I want you to understand basically the concept. Is a DPR a mixed nerve?
Yes.
Yes. Is a VPR a mixed nerve? Yes. So typically when we talk about sensory, we're talking about cutaneous sensation to skin. Okay? So they're both going to be sensory to skin. DPR is going to get skin in the back. And again, I'm not trying to make a big deal about knowing exactly where DPR is going to be sensory to. DPR is also getting skin. VPR is getting skin. For sure. If I asked you guys, do DPRs innervate any muscles of the back? What would you tell me?
Yes.
Okay. If I asked you which of those muscles, think how many could you name for me? I'm hoping the answer is 7. Dear Lord, Spears, 7, really? 7. What are the ones everybody's forgetting? Multifidus and rotators. True muscles of the back innervated by DPR. Yeah, DPRs. Okay? If I ask you, are any muscles of the back innervated by VPRs, what are you going to tell me?
Yes.
Not true muscles of the back, but there's some superficial and some intermediate muscles, right? Everybody understands that. Are there any muscles of the back not innervated by DPR, VPR? There's one. Trapezius is innervated by what? By spinal accessory nerve, cranial nerve 11. It's a cranial nerve. Okay? It's not a DPR or VPR. Okay? It's a cranial nerve. Cranial nerves are not DPR or VPR. They're something different. Okay? Geez, I'm giving away all the quiz and exam questions. I want everything to write.
Good.
Might have to. You know, there's a lot of things I can sit in here and I can tell people, and I can still write the same exact question knowing that I'll get people to miss it even after I've told you all about it. So, It's never a problem. Okay. I'll get into spinal nerve stuff, maybe if I got some time at the end. Okay. I know I had this in here. Alright, so we have three meninges associated with the spinal cord. Dura mater, arachnoid mater, pia mater. Okay? Make sure you understand the spaces associated with them. We know that there's three spaces, right? Epidural space, subdural space, subarachnoid space. Out of those spaces, which of those, relative to the spinal cord, would be considered we call a true space versus a potential space? There's only one of those that's a potential space, right? Subdural space is a potential space, whereas epidural outside the dura is a true space between the dura mater and basically the vertebral column. Subarachnoid between the arachnoid and the pia mater is a true space because cerebrospinal fluid is found there. It's really, the reason why arachnoid and dura are up against each other is not that there's, calling it a potential space is not really a true anatomical thing or whatever, but we tend to kind of refer to it that way because what happens is in the human, in the living person, the CSF, there's enough pressure from the CSF that the arachnoid mater is basically applied to the dura mater. The reason, like when you guys came in the lab and did the dissection, and the arachnoid mater is separate from the dura, is the fact that you have no CSF, there's no pressure there, so the arachnoid mater just kind of falls down and collapses back down upon itself. So that's why you can really, it doesn't look like they're stuck to each other, whereas in real life they are. So know those spaces, and then the other thing I wanted to get to were there are some things that were extensions. Somebody had asked me a question about what the heck the coccygeal ligament is. So let me talk about a couple of these things. All right. There are some extensions of the spinal cord, both in a lateral direction and an inferior direction, that are made from pia mater only. All right? The denticulate ligaments and the filum terminale. All right? Pia mater only. So the denticulate ligaments are these red things in this diagram. Hopefully they look fairly white in your cadaver. But this thing right here, denticulate meaning tooth, or what I'm trying to get people to understand, it's like a saw blade, kind of like a serrated blade, like a steak knife. It has this appearance to it, and so like every so often it comes along and attaches itself to the dura mater. So you'll see kind of like this tooth-shaped appearance, sawtooth blade or whatever, and then it will come over and attach itself. So what the denticulate ligaments are, they're lateral attachments of the spinal cord, and so they kind of help keep the cord anchored kind of in the lateral direction within the vertebral column. Okay, so it keeps it from, when we're walking around, just keep it from slopping around or flopping around inside the vertebral column. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you as well is, when you look at this, you'll see this series of, and I'm going to call them rootlets, but if you want to say root, think root in your head, that's fine. But you'll see these series of rootlets slash root. There's a group here, and there's a group here. You can use the denticulate ligament to separate out dorsal from ventral roots. Okay? Because if you look at the spinal cord, this is just like you're looking at it on your cadaver, all right? We're looking from a dorsal view down on the spinal cord. So any of these denticulate ligaments lying any of these rootlets lying superficial to the denticulate ligament would be dorsal rootlets, or hence dorsal root, when they come together and merge. These that you see coming from deep to the denticulate ligament would be ventral rootlets, ventral root, if you will. And that's how you can always tell the difference between those two is their relationship to the denticulate ligament inside the dura mater. Okay? So they separate out those two. They'll come together. They're actually going to exit out, become ventral root, dorsal root, come together, merge, form spinal nerve, split VPR, DPR. But denticulate ligament. And then, all right, the structure right here is filum terminale, right? Terminal filament, if you will. And what the filum really represents is, think back to what we learned about the spinal cord itself and how embryonically it went almost the full length of vertebral column. And then what happens is, as we age, we see that the spinal cord doesn't become the full length of it. Well, really, probably telling you more than you need to know, but I think it's kind of interesting. What happens is the